dare you lecture me about justice? You wouldn't know justice if it hit you. You are a biased...
No one in that courtroom expected what was about to unfold. It started like any other morning. Quiet murmurs, the shuffle of papers, the usual rhythm of routine hearings. But the moment she walked through those doors, everything changed. A woman in her mid-40s entered with the kind of presence that demanded attention. Designer heels clicked against the tile floor. Diamonds caught the light at her wrists and neck, and her expression carried the unmistakable weight of someone who had never been told no. She didn't wait for instruction. She simply placed her handbag on the defendant's table and stared toward the bench as though the proceedings were beneath her dignity. When her name was called, she didn't stand with respect. She stood with impatience. "Let's make this quick," she said flatly. "I have appointments. I am Frederick, and I've spent years studying courtroom cases where power, pride, and accountability collide. This one stayed with me because it revealed something most people try to hide. What happens when someone believes they're untouchable and the system finally proves otherwise? If you value stories where justice doesn't bend to wealth or status, go ahead and hit the like button, because what unfolded next exposed more than just a traffic violation. Judge Caprio glanced up from the paperwork, his tone measured. "This court respects everyone's time. I'd appreciate the same courtesy." She let out a short laugh, sharp and dismissive. "Courtesy? I shouldn't even be here for something this minor." The gallery shifted. A few people exchanged glances. There was tension now, the kind that builds before something breaks. He read the citation aloud. "Reckless driving through a school zone." Before he could finish, she interrupted. "Oh, please, those kids should pay more attention." A quiet gasp rippled through the benches. Still, the judge remained calm, adjusting his glasses. "You may want to choose your words carefully. Everything here is on record." And then it happened. The moment that would later be replayed and discussed across countless platforms. She leaned back in her chair, folded her arms, and muttered something under her breath. But the microphones picked it up. Clear, deliberate, vulgar. The word hung in the air like a slap. The bailiff's hand moved toward his radio. A woman in the back instinctively covered her child's ears. Judge Caprio didn't flinch. He simply looked at her, his stillness cutting through her arrogance more effectively than any reprimand. She smiled, as if daring him to respond. "What? Did I offend the honourable judge?" Her tone dripped with mockery. "I don't buy into these little performances. You sit there pretending to be fair while people like me fund this system." It wasn't just disrespect anymore. It was a challenge. The audience could feel it. This wasn't a routine hearing. This was a collision between entitlement and accountability, between pride and consequence. But what no one knew yet was that her outburst would become the thread that unraveled everything. That single moment of arrogance would lead to revelations she thought no one could trace. The silence that followed wasn't ordinary. It was thick, deliberate, the kind that makes even the smallest sound seem loud. Judge Caprio leaned back slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. There was no anger in his expression, no rush to respond, just a calm so deliberate it felt like judgment taking shape. "This courtroom is not a stage," he said finally, his voice low and steady. "It's a place of record, of consequence, and of accountability. Do you understand that?" She tilted her chin upward. "Accountability," she scoffed. "Accountability is whatever people like me can afford." A murmur of disbelief passed through the gallery. One man whispered, "She's not serious," but she was. Every word carried the certainty of someone who had never faced real consequences. "I don't play by small-town rules," she continued. "You hand out tickets to people who can't fight back. I'm not one of them. I have influence. I have resources. And if I wanted to, I could make this all disappear." The judge didn't respond. He simply let her words settle, heavy with their own arrogance. The audience shifted uncomfortably, the line between order and chaos growing thinner. Then, quietly, he asked, "You believe influence changes right and wrong?" "I believe influence decides outcomes," she replied without hesitation. "People respect you because they fear you. I don't fear anyone." For a brief moment, even she seemed to sense how far she'd gone. But instead of pulling back, she smiled wider, as though her defiance itself was proof of victory. Judge Caprio leaned forward slightly. "You mistake fear for respect and money for authority. You'll learn the difference before you leave this room." The crowd stirred again. Even those who had come for routine matters couldn't look away. Something larger was happening, a moral divide forming, one side fueled by arrogance, the other grounded in order. Here's the thing I've noticed in cases like this. People who believe the rules don't apply to them often talk themselves into corners. They confuse silence for weakness. But silence in the right hands becomes observation, and observation becomes evidence. She laughed again, glancing around the courtroom. You're all so dramatic. This isn't a movie, it's a traffic ticket, and I'll walk out of here like I always do, untouched. The arrogance wasn't just spoken, it radiated from every gesture, every dismissive glance. She brushed invisible dust from her blazer, as if even the air in the room was beneath her. Judge Caprio's silence only made her bolder. Let me tell you something, she said, her voice rising. People like me don't live under the same rules as the rest of you. We create them. I employ people. I pay city permits. I keep this town running. And you think you can lecture me about safety? Her words echoed against the wood-panelled walls. The audience watched, torn between fascination and disgust. Some shook their heads. Others whispered to neighbours. But all of them knew this wasn't defiance anymore. It was confession wrapped in pride. Judge Caprio spoke, his tone measured. You seem proud of breaking the law. I'm proud of not needing it. She shot back instantly. Justice looks away for the wealthy, and I've paid enough to know it. The gallery erupted in whispers. A woman in the front row muttered, she's saying it out loud. The judge folded his hands, studying her like someone reading a familiar text. You believe you can buy your way through every rule. I don't believe it, she said, leaning forward with a confident smirk. I've done it. For years. The weight of her admission filled the room. He didn't have to argue. She'd already said more than enough. But still, he pressed gently, almost softly. And that's why you cursed at this court. Her lips curled. I cursed because it deserves it. The system's a game, and I'm just better at playing it than you are. His gaze hardened, the warmth gone. Games have rules. Justice does not. And when people forget that, truth has a way of reminding them. Her smirk faltered for the briefest moment, but she quickly recovered, pretending not to notice the faint tremor in her hand. The audience could see what she couldn't admit. The armor was cracking. The judge straightened his papers and spoke quietly, almost to himself. We'll see how far your version of truth can stretch before it breaks. She leaned back, crossing her legs, confident again. Good luck proving anything. But someone in the gallery whispered words she couldn't hear. He doesn't need luck. He needs time. And as the gavel rested nearby, everyone sensed it, the shift. Her pride had finally spoken too loudly, and now truth was ready to answer. Judge Caprio didn't respond right away. He simply adjusted his glasses and gestured to the clerk. Let's verify a few things before we continue, he said softly, but the steadiness in his tone carried more weight than any shout. The woman tilted her head. Verify what? I already told you, my record speaks for itself. His voice stayed calm. That's exactly what I intend to check. He nodded to the clerk, who handed over a folder thick with papers. The judge flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning quietly, the faint sound of rustling paper filling the still air. Then, without looking up, he asked, this business you mentioned, the one you claim you built, what's it called? She straightened her blazer, her confidence returning. Salon Noir, 3 floors, clients from across the state, every inch of it mine. He nodded slowly, still reading. And yet, according to the city's registry, Salon Noir isn't under your name. Her smile froze. That's impossible. The documents list the legal owner as your mother. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Even the bailiff looked uncertain. The woman laughed nervously. Oh, that. It's a technicality. I transferred everything years ago for tax reasons. My mother doesn't even understand the paperwork. Judge Caprio looked up at her, his expression unreadable. You mean she's elderly? She's fine, she snapped quickly, just not sharp anymore. He leaned forward slightly, and yet her name appears on multiple loan documents, property deeds and utility accounts, all tied to overdue balances. Her voice cracked just slightly. Those are clerical errors. You know how messy city offices can be. No, he said, his tone firm but even. Messy is paperwork misplaced. What I'm seeing is a pattern, and patterns tell stories. The audience went still. The woman's jaw tightened, her eyes darting from the judge to the spectators. Tell me, he continued, does your mother know her signature appears on financial contracts issued in the last 6 months? She signed them, the woman said quickly. He raised a single brow. Even though she's currently under hospice care, her mouth opened but no words came out. The sound of someone in the gallery whispering, "Oh my God," filled the silence. The judge closed the folder gently. You came here claiming independence, but everything you've built stands on the back of someone too fragile to defend herself, her hands clenched on the table. You don't know anything about me. On the contrary, he said softly, you've told me everything I need to know. Pride speaks clearly when truth stays silent. It's moments like this that reveal character, not in grand declarations, but in quiet details. The signatures forged, the debts transferred, the trust betrayed. Some people wear success like armor, but underneath the foundation is hollow. The woman looked down for the first time since she'd entered. Her arrogance flickered like a dying flame. The audience leaned forward. They could sense it now. The unraveling had begun. The courtroom no longer felt like a room. It felt like a held breath. Every gaze was locked on the woman, who sat rigid, her painted smile fading into something thinner, colder. Judge Caprio turned another page in the file, his tone calm but edged with purpose. According to these records, he said, you not only transferred your business into your mother's name, you also listed her as guarantor for several loans, totaling over $40,000. Her response came too fast. Those papers were arranged legally. My attorney handled it. He didn't blink. Your attorney submitted a letter this morning, withdrawing from representation. The words hit harder than a gavel. Her mouth twitched, eyes darting toward the empty seat beside her. The audience murmured. She tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. He's useless anyway. I told him I'd take care of this myself. His gaze was steady. And yet, when you tried to take care of it yourself, you forged your mother's signature. Gasps erupted. The sound rippled through the benches like thunder. The woman's jaw dropped. That's a lie. You can't prove, he interrupted, his voice slicing through her denial. The state's forensic team already did. The signature on your loan papers doesn't match your mother's verified handwriting. Would you like to hear the expert statement aloud? Her lips parted, but no sound came. The room felt smaller now, the air dense. From the second row, a man stood. His voice trembled, but it carried. Your Honor, that woman nearly hit my granddaughter in a school zone 3 months ago. She laughed when I asked her to slow down. The gallery fell silent. Judge Caprio turned toward the bailiff. Present the footage. A screen flickered to life. Grainy footage showed her car speeding past a crosswalk, a child stepping back in terror. The gasp that followed was collective, human, and horrified. The woman looked at the screen, then away, jaw tightening. This is not perception, the judge said firmly. It's evidence. Lives were endangered, families affected, and you mock the system that protects them. She slammed her palm on the table. People exaggerate. That footage doesn't show everything. He raised his hand. It shows enough. It shows what pride looks like when it stops seeing others as human. Her voice cracked. You're trying to ruin me. No, he replied softly. You did that the moment you decided that power meant immunity. The gallery stirred. Shock, anger and relief mixing in the same heartbeat. Her silence was louder than any outburst. He leaned forward, his tone low, almost sorrowful. This court does not silence arrogance with rage. It silences it with truth. And today, truth has spoken. For the first time, she didn't look defiant. She looked afraid. If you believe real justice still exists, drop a comment and tell me what accountability means to you, because what's coming next will show exactly how truth finishes what arrogance begins. The moment the footage ended, the courtroom dissolved into whispers. Some people shook their heads in disbelief. Others stared at the woman as if trying to reconcile the version of her who strutted in minutes ago with the one now trembling in silence. Judge Caprio sat motionless behind the bench, hands folded, his eyes fixed not in anger, but in something heavier, disappointment. When he finally spoke, the sound was quiet enough to demand stillness. What you have done to this court, to your community, and to your own mother is not rebellion, it is betrayal. The words hit her like strikes, slow and deliberate. She tried to laugh again, that familiar mocking tone, but it fell flat, cracking midway. You don't understand how things work in the real world. Everyone moves money. Everyone signs names. It's just paperwork. His gaze didn't waver. Paperwork doesn't destroy lives. Choices do. She clenched her fists, the diamond ring on her finger glinting beneath the lights. You think I care what these people think of me? They came here to watch, not to matter. Wrong, he said softly. They came to see justice work, and perhaps today to remember that it still can. He motioned to the clerk. Bring the remaining records. A fresh folder was placed before him. He opened it, flipping through the pages until he found what he needed. His voice was calm but edged with finality. These statements show funds withdrawn from your business accounts, not for employee wages or operations, but for personal luxury purchases. Meanwhile, your staff went months without full pay. She shook her head, eyes wide. Those are business perks. I built that company. No, he interrupted. Your mother built it the moment she covered your debts. Your employees sustained it when they worked unpaid, and your arrogance nearly destroyed it. The woman's face hardened. You have no right to judge how I live my life. A murmur of disbelief swept the gallery. He leaned forward, his tone sharpening. That's exactly what a court exists for, to judge what harms others and to protect those who cannot protect themselves. He gestured again, and an officer stepped forward with another file. This one sealed in red. Your mother's bank records, he said, his voice grave. Her social security checks were used to pay your rent and property taxes. Withdrawals were made on days she was hospitalized. The woman's mouth fell open. For a second, her confidence broke entirely. That's not possible. He cut her off gently. Your mother may not remember every transaction, but the paper remembers, and so does the law. Her breath quickened. The court could hear it. The gallery sat frozen. Even the bailiff had stopped pacing. The judge's tone dropped lower, almost fatherly now, but every word struck like thunder. Do you understand what you've done? He asked quietly. You turned your mother, the woman who gave you life, into collateral for your vanity. Her eyes glistened, but pride still fought to survive. She's fine. She doesn't even care about money. His eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. It isn't about money. It's about dignity. Hers and the one you've lost. For a moment, no one breathed. The mask was slipping faster now. The defiance that once filled her voice had been replaced with shallow gasps. Her hands trembled on the table, her perfectly manicured nails tapping anxiously against the wood. Judge Caprio turned toward the gallery. This is not merely arrogance, it's exploitation. A daughter preying on her mother's weakness to preserve a lie. And that is what this court cannot and will not ignore. The bailiff's voice echoed faintly. Order in the court, but there was no chaos, only stunned silence. The woman leaned forward, voice shaking. You think you can ruin my life over this? You're just doing this for attention. His reply was measured, almost mournful. No, I'm doing this because accountability is not cruelty. It's mercy that comes too late. He opened her phone, which had been confiscated earlier, and held it up. Would you like me to read what you texted minutes before entering this courtroom? Her eyes widened. No, but he did. His voice was slow, deliberate. Court is a circus. I'll pay and they'll erase it. The old judge will swallow anything. The crowd gasped. Someone whispered, she said that about him. Another voice muttered, unbelievable. He set the phone down, his tone unshaken. You wanted attention. Now you have it, but not the kind you sought. You wanted control, but the truth has taken that from you. She rose suddenly, palms slamming against the table. You can't do this. You can't touch what's mine. He didn't move. Everything you built on deceit was never yours to begin with. Her breath hitched. For the first time, the room saw it. Not anger, not arrogance, but fear. The kind of fear that comes when a person realizes the mask they wore for years has finally fallen. Judge Caprio turned to the clerk. All fraudulent debts tied to her mother's name are to be frozen pending criminal review. Her voice broke. This is traffic court. This, he said quietly, became something much larger the moment you cursed at the truth. A few spectators clapped softly, not in mockery, but in reverence. The gavel hadn't even struck yet, and everyone could already feel it. The end was near. His voice softened once more. I won't remember your words. I'll remember your mother's name, because she, not you, deserves protection. The woman lowered herself slowly into her seat, eyes vacant, as though the walls of her world were finally closing in. For years she thought she could buy silence, but silence had turned against her, and now justice spoke with her own voice. The tension in the courtroom had reached a point where even breathing felt loud. Every eye stayed locked on the woman who once entered like she owned the floor, now sitting hollow-eyed, her hands still trembling against the defendant's table. The sparkle of her jewellery had lost all meaning. It only caught the light when she moved, reflecting the weight of everything collapsing around her. Judge Caprio sat in silence for several moments. He didn't rush his words. He let the reality of what had unfolded breathe through the room. When he finally spoke, his tone was steady, resonant, and impossibly calm. This hearing began with a citation for reckless driving, but it ends as something far greater, a study in pride, in deception, and in how far a person will go to protect the illusion of control. The woman stared straight ahead, her lips pressed into a hard line. "You can lecture all you want," she muttered, voice shaking but defiant. "I'll appeal this. I always win." His gaze held hers. "No, you've confused escaping consequence with winning. But escaping truth isn't victory, it's delay. And delay only makes the fall harder." The gallery remained still. No coughs, no whispers. The air was thick with that peculiar silence that follows truth when it's finally spoken out loud. He continued, "You claim success, but what have you built? A business anchored in lies, a family wounded by greed, and a legacy written in the signature of a woman who trusted you." His words carried no cruelty, only sorrow. "We measure character not by what we gain, but by what we protect. And you have protected nothing but your pride." Her jaw tightened, but the tears forming in her eyes betrayed her. For the first time, the audience saw the face beneath the armor, not the queen of confidence, but a daughter cornered by the truth she forged herself. Judge Caprio turned to the clerk. "File this for immediate referral to the district attorney. The charges will include forgery, financial abuse of the elderly, and obstruction. The court also orders restitution of any debts tied to her mother's name pending outcome." The courtroom erupted in murmurs, not out of shock now, but relief. Justice had arrived, calm and unstoppable. She slammed her palm on the table, voice breaking. "You think this makes you powerful? You think this is justice?" He stood slowly, the light behind him casting a faint glow across the bench. "Power has nothing to do with it. Justice doesn't roar, it endures. It's what's left when all lies are stripped away." For a long second, she didn't respond. Then her voice fell to a whisper. "You've ruined me." "No," he said gently. "You ruined yourself. I merely turned on the lights." He lifted his gavel and looked around the room at the crowd that had witnessed the unmasking, at the officers who stood ready, at the silence that seemed sacred now. "Case referred," he said firmly. The gavel came down with a sharp, echoing crack. The sound didn't just end the hearing, it ended her illusion. The bailiff stepped forward. "Please stand." But she didn't move. Her shoulders sagged, her hands slack on the table. The arrogance was gone, the smirk was gone. All that remained was the smallness of someone who finally saw herself clearly for the first time and hated what she found. As she was escorted toward the exit, the gallery rose. No one spoke. Some nodded quietly toward the bench. Others simply watched, the lesson written across their faces. One older woman near the back whispered, "Her mother deserves peace now." Judge Caprio gathered his papers and paused. He didn't look proud. He looked tired, reflective. Then he spoke, not to her, but to everyone still listening. "This court is not a place for humiliation. It's a place for truth. When truth hurts, it's not punishment, it's purification. And sometimes that's the only kind of justice left." A hush swept the room. For a moment, the noise of the world outside, sirens, traffic, life, faded. Inside, there was only the quiet pulse of realization. The woman was gone now, escorted down the hall, but the emptiness she left behind lingered. People looked at one another differently, as if reminded that decency was not weakness and integrity was still worth something. He turned to the clerk one last time. Let the record show that even arrogance must one day answer to grace. Then he left the bench, his robe trailing in the air, thick with meaning. The final image of that day, if anyone could capture it, wasn't of the gavel or the door closing or the woman's departure. It was of the empty chair at the defense table, lit softly by morning light, like a quiet warning left behind for whoever thought the rules would never catch up. And for everyone watching, both in that courtroom and beyond, one truth settled deep and permanent. You can buy silence, you can buy influence, but you can never buy redemption. If you believe arrogance always meets its match, make sure to subscribe for more real courtroom stories where truth rises louder than pride, because justice in the end doesn't negotiate, it simply waits.